Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag-and-drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. This is The Next Reel, everybody. I'm Pete Wright, and that there is Andy Nelson.
Hey there, everybody.
And we spoil movies. Tonight on the show, we wrap up our series, This Is Real Life, Jack, with the 2003 Gary Ross horse thriller Seabiscuit. Before we get into that, you should learn more about us at thenextreel.com. I feel like I should have, like, some coconuts, you know? And whistles. Right? Don't you?
Sure.
Subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app or join us on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Next Reel. And if you've ever wondered what you should be doing with your slender physique, saddle up and prepare to breeze the ponies, because you're up next in The Next Reel's Instagram, hashtag Pony Prize, hashtag Guess the Movie Challenge.
And since Games Master Stephen Smart currently has his foot stuck in a stirrup and is being dragged around the stables, I'm here to fill you in on this week's game. The movie was 27 Dresses, Anne Fletcher's 2008 wedding rom-com starring Katherine Heigl and James Marsden. Congrats at Fegfee for once again figuring it out, this time on Image 3. You are once again entered into the 2016 Pony Prize hat.
What is the deal with Stephen Smart and his foot? Like, it feels like it's been in a foot or a vice or some sort of horrible thing for a lot of weeks. Are we ever going to hear from him again?
I don't know.
He's being drugged through a series of barns across the United Kingdom.
It's not that big of a place.
We miss you, Stephen Smart. Come back to us. Anyway.
He will with his little brace on his leg.
He will. He will get better. That horse will rehabilitate him. And we do have a blot spot this week. A little follow-up from friend of the show, Ben Lott, talking about Black Hawk Down. Really?
That's right. Black Hawk Down is definitely an intense and dramatic war film. My big problem with it is that there are so many characters in so many places, all firing guns while shouting at one another for 2 hours. It feels authentic, but when that's what I'm being bombarded with, I cannot connect names to faces, let alone personalities to faces, so I have no emotional connection to any of them. I also failed to understand where people were and what was happening at any given moment. I didn't dislike the film, but perhaps this type of movie isn't for me. Your rank 17, my rank 136.
I think that's a fair assessment, especially going into the movie that we're about to talk about. It can be a great film and not a film for you.
You know, I would say if the rock, paper, scissors had won that first round with Hot Fuzz, it might have been down around there.
That's true. That's true. We actually, I love that we actually got a comment on the epic rock, paper, scissors, but more importantly, the good Philip Hurd on Facebook wrote into us.
Yes, he had some great comments. He enjoyed the episode. But more importantly, we learned that he was actually over there in Somalia just before this whole thing went down, it looks like about 10 months before this whole thing happened, with the military. He was an infantryman with the 3rd Battalion, 9th Marines. So that's pretty amazing that you were over there. Glad to hear everything went well as far as the part of it that you were in. And thanks for sharing that with us, Philip. Pretty amazing stuff.
We really appreciate that. And on behalf of myself and Major Tom, we thank you for noting. That's all. That's all we have to say. Andy, it's time. Let's do trailers. Andy, on behalf of the people of Boston, I would like you to go first.
Yes, knowing that we're wrapping up our series with our true stories this week, I thought it would be fitting to pick a new film that is based on a true story, and I'm talking about the film Patriots Day, the new Peter Berg film that is going to be coming out next year, starring Mark Wahlberg, of course, Michelle Monaghan, Kevin Bacon, John Goodman, J.K. Simmons, Melissa Benoist, just a great cast. It's going to be, it'll be a hard one. This is the story about the 2013 Boston Marathon bombing and the aftermath that happened, and just how tough it was, but also how amazing our law enforcement and the FBI and everybody involved, all the different military that came together to actually solve this devastating terrorist attack as quickly as possible, and bring the terrorists to justice. I'm looking forward to it. Part of it is because I actually worked on the TV movie version of it that surprisingly filmed here in Phoenix, which is weird to say. It was.
Sorry, I can't continue.
I know it's strange.
As a double for Boston.
It was a TV movie. It was a reenactment story, inside the hunt for the Boston bombers. And primarily it was made up of real footage and interviews of all the people that were involved. And so the portion that we did of the reenactments was actually pretty small. And it was all intercut with real news footage and stuff. So the shots didn't have to be too specific, and we were able to actually make it look pretty good. But unfortunately, when they were filming it, Boston was, in a blizzard, and so didn't quite look the same.
It's pretty good.
And Phoenix did.
That's right. Cutting from the old church to to stucco.
I'd be curious, though, to talk to somebody who could pinpoint shots that were shot in Phoenix, though. It's surprisingly cut in such a way that I can't even tell. Yeah, so anyway, I'm quite excited. I mean, Peter Berg has been doing this for a while now, doing these based on true stories that are pretty intense. I mean, he's got one in theaters right now, and, I haven't seen Deepwater Horizon, although it is something I'm curious about. But, here it is, yet another one. And this is on the heels of, what was the one he did right before that? It was another... because he did... it was the Lone Survivor. That's
Lone Survivor, that's right, with also with him.
Oh, Mark Wahlberg. Yeah, so it's they've definitely found each other, and they are making a lot of these. So I know Mark Wahlberg is from Boston, so I feel like if there's anybody who's going to make sure that he's doing his town proud, it's going to be him. So, I'm looking forward to this. It is coming out January. Makes me kind of curious, kind of what's happening there. I'm guessing it's going to be released in at the end of the year in LA and New York to be around for awards season. That's my hunch.
I liked the trailer. I thought it looked good in terms of this kind of movie. I feel like I'm getting used to Peter Berg's big Wahlberg movies. It doesn't feel like I don't know if it feels a little much. I feel like there's risk to it and maybe I am hypersensitive to movies that just feel like too soon to make movies out of these events that we just experienced. Like, I don't need pop culture to move that quickly. Like, I still remember the news footage. I don't need to see it again. So I am biased, sort of bearish on this film. We'll probably not see it in the theater. I'll probably wait and see it, in a couple of years. When on digital. I like the cast, though. I'm pretty excited about the cast. We're in the middle of binging Supergirl, so Melissa Benoist is big on our TV every single day with the Supergirl. But she actually strikes a good superhero, and it's kind of it's fun to see her get bigger roles too. Michelle Monaghan, big fan of Michelle Monaghan's work, and of course J.K. Simmons can't lose. They should make a TV show called J.K. Simmons Can't Lose. I'd watch that.
Would it be a sequel to Parker Lewis?
It would. Fantastic. Good catch, Andy. God, I line him up. You hit him right out of the park. And John Goodman, of course. I need a redemptive John Goodman piece after he
10
did
Cloverfield.
10 Cloverfield Lane. Yeah, he's got a bunch coming up though. With Patriots Day, he's got Kong Skull Island, and there's always Transformers: The Last Night. Anyway.
Hey, with Mark Wahlberg.
I know, right? There you go.
Filmed here in Arizona.
Are you, really? Well, probably was probably a quarry. Was it a quarry?
It was actually a junkyard and a freeway.
There you go.
That's why
close.
people come here.
Pretty close. You already said when it's coming out, right? I wasn't listening.
Yes. Thank you for that. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. I'm not going to say it again.
All right, then I'm going to do my trailer.
You do it.
I really normally would not have picked this trailer. There were a lot of great trailers this week, but I saw this one, I watched the trailer, and I had to get it because I knew if I didn't, you would, and I put myself in a race with you. Maybe because of the movie tonight that we're doing. Everything's a race. It is Army of One. Perhaps the best opportunity for Nicolas Cage to play himself of any film I have ever seen. This is also based on a true story. I have not heard anything about this story at all. The story of an American civilian, kind of a lunatic, who starts hearing the voice of God, and the voice of God, of course, is Russell Brand. And God tells him this guy needs to go to Pakistan and capture Osama bin Laden. And this guy is Nicolas Cage. You have to go to the webs, go to thenextreel.com. You've got to watch this trailer in the show notes of this week's episode. You've got to see it because you'll know what I'm saying when you watch it. This is Nicolas Cage's. This is his chance to really shine and show us what he is made of at his core, hand to glove. It is directed by Larry Charles. Larry Charles directed Borat and Bruno, and so he has worked much with the good Sacha Baron Cohen. Whatever you think of those movies and that kind of comedy, I find this interesting because here's a guy, Larry Charles, who's directed these pieces, and of course he was a producer of Seinfeld and one of the founders of Seinfeld. So you can't disregard that. This is a guy who knows comedy, but when you look at Bruno and Borat and some of his other work behind, Curb Your Own Enthusiasm and Entourage as producer and The Comedians as a producer, and then you see him doing a true story where he can still let the comedic juices sort of shine. I get really excited about that. I think it's a fun experimental piece, and Sacha Baron Cohen isn't in it, but when you see the trailer, you kind of figure out he could be.
I got so excited when I watched it. It just looks whack-a-doodle, and I'm just very excited to see what happens with it. I mean, it might be one of those movies that looks so crazy that it just ends up really bad. But Nicolas Cage is just doing something completely just off the rocker, and it makes me really excited. So I am very curious about this one, and definitely want to check it out. It's got an interesting team behind it. Nicolas Cage, when he's really getting into a role, it can work sometimes. So I'm kind of excited by this one. I couldn't stop laughing. So
totally, I think it has some. I don't know. It's a funny sort of ironic set of release dates that are available right now. Pretty much USA. It will be coming limited theatrical release and digital release on November 4th, DVD premiere on November 15th, and Russia, December 15th. And that's it. That's it. So whatever you want to make of the political tea leaves that the IMDb release date schedule is, if you're in the United States, catch it on digital November 4th. There you go.
Excellent.
$100,000. Makes me want to walk on all fours and put a saddle on my back, Andy.
Red Pollard, Mr. Howard.
Hi.
Hello.
Of course, it's nuts.
I'm not afraid of you.
Every horse is good for something. You don't throw a whole life away just 'cause it's banged up a little.
Seems pretty fast.
Yeah, in every direction. He just needs to learn how to be a horse again.
How far do you want me to take him?
Till he stops.
Let's see what you got, boy.
Seabiscuit, Andy, 2003, written and directed by Gary Ross, based on the book by Laura Hillenbrand. And it stars Tobey Maguire, Jeff Bridges, Chris Cooper, Elizabeth Banks. It is the true story of the Depression-era racehorse that went on and dominated racing, and the team that made it so. And there you go. That's the story, and it makes you cry.
Oh, yes, it does.
Doesn't it, Andy? What'd you think of it?
I absolutely love this movie. I am one of those people that just, the you could say a sappiness or whatever it is, but just the emotional heart of this film, I really connect to, and it's just been one of my favorites since I watched it, and really connect with this film. I think Gary Ross and his team did a really bang-up job of creating a story that, I feel like it's more than just about Seabiscuit. I feel like they actually found a great way to, it's about Seabiscuit. It's about these three men in Seabiscuit's life that kind of are all broken men, and how by coming together around this horse, they're all able to kind of heal each other and heal themselves. And I think that's really powerful. But I think it's also a really fascinating way to tell a story that really puts the viewer into kind of the situation that these people were in at the time, which, was the Great Depression and everything that happens kind of right before and after the stock market crash. And it's a 30-year period the story is told over the course of. And I feel like the way that they integrate the radio clips and the narration done by the wonderful David McCullough, it really kind of unfolds, and I feel like they do this really magical job of it's almost like this pseudo documentary that puts me into the situation while also allowing me to really emotionally connect with these characters as they go on this journey to kind of ride the ups and downs of life.
I liked it. I did like it, and I was emotionally moved by it. I don't think I had the same connection that you did to it. And I think part of it is I'm not interested in horse racing. And so I feel like I'm I have a hard time getting myself interested in horse racing. So I tried to read a little bit of the book, and I immediately went to sleep. Like, it was very difficult for me to read the book. I watched some of the documentaries. It was very difficult for me to keep my attention on them. I watched as many of the early races and the final race as I could. Those were interesting, though not terribly full of dramas. I wasn't there. I know how it ended. It looked exactly like it did on screen, and so I was sort of challenged there. I am really fascinated, though, by the place that this horse served in the cultural fabric of the time, and I think that the movie, as you say, does a great job of demonstrating that through all of these intersecting storylines that come together, toward the formation of this impromptu team around this horse and around winning these races. And I really like that a lot, even as I find that the movie is about the most exciting thing about horse racing that I can think about. So I'm in it with you around that. But everything else, I have kind of a hard time with it up till the very end, which somehow suckers me into it.
I think that's so funny that you say all that as if I'm really into horse racing, which I'm not. I've seen horse races.
You're right. That is an unfair parallel a false parallel that I made on behalf of you.
Right. It's only horse racers or people interested in horse racing. No.
Right.
I had never watched a horse race other than in movies, and that's really my experience with horse races. I've seen some since, but even then, I'm like, I don't find them that interesting to watch. Although I do every year. One of these days, I am going to actually plop myself down in a place so I can actually watch the Kentucky Derby, because every year I'm like, I got to remember to watch the Kentucky Derby this year, because I feel like I should watch the Kentucky Derby. It just seems like one of those things that people should do at least once in their lives. And every year I'm like, I missed it. It happened like 2 hours ago, because it's over in like 2 minutes. These horse races are so quick. So one of these days I will watch it, but really I haven't seen any important horse races. I haven't really seen much, and I probably could use somebody in my life who understands them to kind of teach me some of the ins and outs. Because when I've watched, I'm like, okay, they're going around the track, okay, and that was it, and somebody won, and they're not overly exciting.
Yeah.
But there's something about these characters and how they get into this world of horse racing, and how I feel like the filmmakers are really putting me in there and connecting me with the characters. And that's what this film really is. And I think they do such a good job of, is introducing us to these characters and this world as we see them in their different lives, as they kind of, end up kind of moving in separate paths, but toward each other eventually. And I just get so connected to all of them, whether it's Red and his anger, or Tom and his kind of loss of place, or Howard and his kind of devastation over the loss of a child. It's really interesting, and I think it's just I don't know, it's very touching for me.
The book, in what I have read of the book, and particularly hearing Hillenbrand talk about the horse, it feels very much like the book does a much better job of characterizing just how out of place this horse was in the world of racing. Not only was it short, but the way she talks about it, its body was too big for legs that were too small. It had one leg that threw itself out toward the front, so it was always kind of leaning right. It was just a very strange horse to look at, always sort of off balance. And it was also a ham. It loved to be on camera, and given so much of the media was just transitioning to camera, moving pictures at the time, where this was the number one newspaper in America in 1938, as measured by newspaper column inches, was this horse Seabiscuit. So it was at an interesting time in terms of cultural reportage of its success, but also it made for a great escape. It was a story of an underdog. It was a story of an underdog. Every single player on the team was an underdog. You already talked about Howard and the loss of his child. He was recovering himself, but everybody else was recovering from something. They were never expected to be where they were. And I think that's one of the things that once the movie gets going, it really does pretty well. And I think it makes for a nice touch.
Well, not just the coming together, but the fact that it happens several times. I mean, Red, he's this broken man, abandoned as a child, kind of, his parents leave him because they can't take care of him. He's a very angry man, and he kind of, through teaming up with Seabiscuit and through the kindness of Charles Howard, he's healed and he's kind of making his way now. But then he gets injured, and it's like, and then he's back down at the bottom, and then he has to work his way back up. It's really interesting the way that it has these ups and downs, and I think the movie pairs so nicely with the struggles that everybody was going through at the time in the Depression and how hard life was in general. And like you said, having this underdog that people could kind of root for, especially when he goes up against, War Admiral during the match race later in the film, and how to the little guy and how all these people who are just kind of struggling to make ends meet, how kind of inspiring it was to see, that here's this up and comer from the West Coast who is, kind of a runt like me. And here they are finding a way to make it to the top. And I find it really fascinating.
The script was written by Gary Ross. We already mentioned Gary Ross behind Big and Pleasantville and Dave and Free State of Jones, which I have not seen, and The Tale of Despereaux, big favorite around here. Also Hunger Games and Mr. Baseball. I mean, he really has written sort of the spectrum of films that I find my own affinity to. Some are great, some are not so great. How does this one stack up from your perspective as a screenplay?
I was hoping to look at the script and see how he wrote it. I got little glimpses of it in some of the special features on the DVD, but he is a writer director. Although I like how he kind of thinks of himself as he plans the script and he writes it, and then he's like, and then I have to turn the writer off and I have to be the director, because it's hard to be the writer director. You feel like you're kind of dancing between these two things. So once he's the director, then he kind of puts himself in a place where he's okay kind of directing and doing things to the script that he probably wouldn't have done as the writer. And I think that's very interesting. I think as the script goes, as a writer director, he's one of those guys who writes kind of in code and it's shorthand, and he puts visuals in there and he kind of plans it out in his head the way that he is going to actually direct it. And I think that's always a really interesting way to read a script when it is a writer-director who kind of writes that way. The Coen brothers can sometimes do that. Other directors who are writer-directors will do that too. And it's interesting. And so I was hoping to look at it. But, I think he does a great job of compressing such a huge amount of time into just over a 2-hour movie and kind of finding the ways to transition. As a screenwriter, it's so important to find the way to transition your stories from scene to scene. And I think he does a really magnificent job of moving us from moment to moment and from scene to scene and from beat to beat as he kind of navigates these 3 lives and 4 lives, really, once you get Seabiscuit in there over these 30 years. I think he does a great job.
So give me an example of how he uses these transitions to good effect.
There's a bunch of them, and they're all over the place, and they're all different kinds. But one in my head right now is you've got a moment when I think it's the young Red, and his dad has just gotten him a horse, and the way that the shot transitions, you have this great shot of young Red as he's riding on his horse, and he jumps over a whatever the horses jump over, a jump thing. And I know that's very technical. A gate. Thank you. See, you know more about this than I do.
I have a dirty
Mr.
secret.
I hate horse riding.
Do you want to hear my dirty secret?
Oh,
I spent a lot of years riding Western Show and competing on a horse. My horse was named Bartlett. He was beautiful. I rode cart and raced cart with my dad growing up. Like, I spent a lot of on track as a youth.
Listen to you.
So, if you need some help with terminology, I may be able to come to your aid. That doesn't mean I like horse racing all that much anymore. So, I'm just saying.
So you're bitter is what happened.
Note, I'm not a jockey now. I'm 6'2" and could never qualify. So shut up, Andy.
You could if you got a really big horse. Okay, so anyway, so he jumps over the gate, and he's moving from screen right to left. And just as he jumps over the gate, we cut to the table at Charles Howard's house as a big roasted pig is plopped down onto the table in the same motion that we have that. And so you get this transition of movement from one scene to the other, just kind of flowing as we move to kind of tie these stories together and just kind of keep the flow going so that our eyes are moving the same way and the story just kind of, the pacing keeps going and everything kind of gets connected. So that's a great example of a visual transition that we do here. And then the narration, I think, is another great transition element that we have, how we see things that are happening, like we see the automobile, for example, and how that kind of transitions. We get some narration that transitions us to Charles Howard leaving the bike shop, and now he's doing the car stuff, and then that transitions to us meeting Tom as he sees the barbed wire all of a sudden in his he's out chasing horses earlier, and now all of a sudden there's barbed wire. He looks over, there's a road. Now we've got cars driving on the road. Then that transitions immediately to Charles Howard talking, doing this cross-country race and talking about the future. It moves so quickly, and he found ways, I think, to really transition us from moment to moment to just keep this story moving just forward, just at a fantastic pace.
I asked the question sort of rhetorically, but I'll talk about it now, related specifically to transitions and the narrator. Because we talk so often about voiceovers, do we really need the narrator to move this story forward? And it sounds like from your perspective we do.
I think that this story could have been told without a narrator. I don't think it necessarily needed a narrator, but I think what Gary Ross did by incorporating the elements that we get with the narration throughout is a connection to the sense of time and the sense of space outside of the people in this story. I think what we get with the narration is a connection to the automobile and how that's changing our times and how it may be moving people away from kind of the way of life that we had before to kind of this way of life that we have now. Very Magnificent Amberson's sort of story. But then we also are getting the sense of space as far as, how difficult it is for people with this Great Depression and the market crash and all the stuff that goes on. And that's what I love about the narration is it's not narration done in that way that filmmakers tell you don't use narration because it's a device that writers use and it'll destroy your script. It's not that sort of narration. This is almost like a documentary sort of narration that I think kind of Gary Ross chose to kind of step outside of the story a little bit and give us some sense of space, world building.
Yeah, I think so too. And I've talked a bunch on this show about how much I love the idea of setting context, about understanding what was going on at the time that the film was made or the period that the film was made, to give us a better sense of the story itself and the implications of the story and the stakes of the story. I think it's a really important thing to do. And in this case, in this film specifically, these narration breaks give us exactly that, quite literally, right? I mean, they give us a little history lesson and sort of set us up for, the story to come and the emotional connection they want us to make with the story yet to come as a result of our better understanding. We have to understand what was going on in the period to understand the stakes that these people, these individual lives, were kind of living under. And I think I really found it a nice touch, and I like David McCullough, and I think his voice is wonderful. It's a little bit jarring at first. The opening sequence, before the setup of the movie, you think you're going to a horse movie, and it starts with this, talking about, automation and, what is happening in the leading up to this in the late 30s. And you sort of get a sense of the pace of change coming out of the Great Depression and the pace of people going to work at these lines and, gearing up to be making, airplanes by the day, not by the week, not by the month, but by the day to support the war effort. And these are all things that are happening leading into the 40s that end up being really impactful and give us, I think, a really nice sense of place in the back of our minds as we watch this, what ultimately is a small story about a small horse that wins races.
Yeah, and a very personal one. I mean, just the way that these people all connect to him, and just I think not just our three protagonists and the people kind of in their lives, but how everybody really ended up connecting to this. I mean, I don't have the statistics in front of me, but the way that, or the number of people that would tune in to these races. I mean, it was like, I think that the match race, I think it was like 40 million people tuned in to listen to this, which was like via radio. And which I think it was like in retro, or if you look statistically at how many people that was versus how many people were in the United States at the time, I think statistically that is actually more a higher number of people tuning in to listen to Seabiscuit's race than it would be to like tuning in to watch the Super Bowl.
That is 129.8 million people in the United States in 1938.
And so, yeah, that's like, a third of the people in the country practically were tuning in to listen to the Seabiscuit's race.
Yeah.
That's a lot of ears. That's amazing.
Crazy. Laura Hillenbrand, what I find interesting to her as the author, interesting about her as the author of the book, this book served a real key place for her as the writer because she was suffering from, chronic fatigue syndrome and, from what I understand, chronic pain. And she would, there were periods where she couldn't write. So she spent a lot of time writing in her head as she would, drift in and out of sleep and that it was absolutely an obsessive, her words, obsessive labor of love to write this book. And apparently it performed very well.
It did. It was, tons of awards and honors. It was, Sport Book of the Year by a number of people, a lot of Best Books of the Year lists, Best Nonfiction lists. I mean, it was all over the place as far as the kudos that the book received. And I think it was like, one of the top selling sports books ever. It's just amazing how well this book did.
So Gary Ross actually directed the film too. And this is where I start to have challenges with it. And I know you don't agree.
No, tell me.
I know you don't. My challenge is
Bring it.
First for me, the first 45 minutes is just chopped salad. And I feel like it is that there was a struggle in my head for him to bring together the stories, the interweaving stories of these people as they sort of grow and merge into one narrative. And that all sort of takes about the first 40 minutes or so. And it's just a mess for me of just slap cuts and between people. It took me the longest time to figure out that young Red and middle-aged young Red and adult Red were actually the same person. And I'd even seen the movie before. Like, who the heck is that little redhead kid? I could not make the connection that was a transition, an age transition character. I really struggled making sense of the different stories of Chris Cooper's character riding across the plains and making his way back, and they didn't make any sense. And I think that's a function of direction because he takes ownership of it, and a function of editing because it was not told in a smooth sort of narrative function for me. But all of that really finds its stride, right when they all start working together to train this horse. And I fall in a much better relationship with it. I just feel like 40 minutes for me is a lot of runway. Like it would have been hard for me to sit through that first 40 minutes and give the whole film a chance if I just flipped to it and saw, Seabiscuit's on. I'm going to give this a shot. I would not have given it a shot. I would have turned it off.
I can't wait to have another conversation about Seabiscuit with you in about 10 years when you watch it and go, gosh, what an idiot I was.
Yeah.
Thinking all of
but
that.
But it's been like 10 years since I've seen it. So it's got to be. This is that conversation, and I am not having that sort of experience.
I think you're wrong, and I like, it shocks me, like, of all the things that you could say, I'm like, I think that Gary Ross shows brilliant control and brilliant just a sense of storytelling as he navigates his way through the whole beginning. I don't know. I find it a really solid story, and I think that it's very easy to understand everything that's going on, who's doing what, where they are, and how they all tie together. And I have no problem making my way through that first act as we lead up to the meeting with Seabiscuit. But
Man.
that's just me.
Well, clearly and maybe just you.
Me and all the people who got it nominated for Best Picture.
It didn't sit that way for me. It sat for me as just sort of inefficient. I hit that space where the horse starts running, and I think, okay, this is the film I tuned in for. I didn't need any of that stuff the way it was presented. If it was going to be presented that way, and my choice was let's leave that in or let's cut it for time, I would have cut it for time and found another way to get to use David McCullough to get us to the point where we meet the horse, and let's move on. Let's move on with the story.
That's where all the character introductions are. That's where you're learning about these people and their lives and how difficult it is. I mean, for me, that's everything we need to get us into the rest of the story so that we have the connection we need with everybody.
And you know what? I don't disagree with that. And I'm saying, I'm speaking a bit hyperbolically there, because I'm not suggesting that I'd rather see this movie without the first 40 minutes. What I'm saying is the first 40 minutes were really rough for me. They were sloppy, and I wasn't able to keep in touch with the story that they were trying to tell, even though I agree with you that we need it and it's important.
All I can say to that is I know that there are people out there who do find, Gary Ross and his filmmaking style, it can be rough for some people, and the emotional, there's definitely a heightened emotion with this film. It is very, you could say cheesy. It is very emotionally big. And I have no problem with that. And some people, have issue with films that wear their emotions on their sleeve, and they want films that are more restrained. I think that the world is good having both types of films. And I think that Gary Ross you could say he's a very brave filmmaker for making such an emotional story. And I think that some people are probably going to say, you know what, the beginning, I don't need all of that because I really just want to get into this story about this horse, and all of the build up to it isn't as necessary. It's not as interesting to me. And you know what? That's fine. People are going to say that. I think that everything that we have leading up to it is an incredibly important part of the story. I really like how Gary chose to do it. And, but I acknowledge that it's not for everybody.
Agree to disagree.
That's right.
First shot, last shot. Would you like to begin?
Yeah, the first shot, we open with David McCullough narrating over a bunch of historical photos about the first Ford's Model T, the manufacturing of cars, and talking about the cultural impact, the assembly line, industrialization, how quickly that changed, and how quickly that really started changing our lives. And that's really kind of the open. It's like a little history lesson.
The last shot, it really highlights John Schwartzman's incredible camera work. We're wrapping up the last race that we see with Seabiscuit. It is slow motion. We have been cutting back and forth between the crowd and the race in action as Seabiscuit pulls away, and the crowd is going wild as Seabiscuit wins the race. We get a close-up on Tobey Maguire's face, Red's face, and the camera slowly pans left as we pull straight on the track from the horse's perspective, and we are just pummeling forward on an empty, open track. There is no competition ahead in this glorious slow motion. It is beautiful treatment, and it speaks of the I think optimism and excitement of the future.
Yeah, and I think it's also just the way that the people in our story have found their way through, and they have shown time and time again any problems that they face, they're going to get back up and keep fighting on. And I think that's a beautiful way to end the film. It's an interesting pairing, though. The opening and closing, there's not really much of a direct tie between the two, other than, you've got kind of the world of the machine and how it's changing our world. And then at the end you have, it's a horse race. You're on a track, but in a way you're kind of, you're not seeing anybody or anything there. It's just this kind of avant-garde shot almost kind of this track as you're kind of moving down it. But in a way it's kind of connecting you with nature a little more. You're riding the horse. So in that sense, I guess there's kind of the, how things are changing, yet how we're still staying connected to the living world.
I would just add to that, too, that this is also a film very much about, our relationship to obstacles, right? Overcoming personal obstacles and technological obstacles. The entire sort of first 15 minutes past that narration about, Howard's kind of work in the bicycle shop and understanding the steamer and fixing things. Agreeing to fix things he doesn't really know how to fix, but just his experience growing his empire. It's all about overcoming obstacles, and to open on the way we collectively, the American way of overcoming obstacles in production. Also, this track symbolizes, look ahead. There is nothing that can stand in our way. Absolutely nothing. And I think that's really symbolic. It wears its symbolism for me right on its horseshoe. And I think in this case, it works. If it draws a tear, it works.
Absolutely.
Casting. Deborah Zane and Terry Taylor are responsible for casting this film. Where do you start casting horses?
Well, luckily, I don't think they had to deal with the horse casting, but
I can see binders of horse headshots.
Yeah, but talking about Seabiscuit in the world of casting, obviously Deborah Zane and Terry Taylor didn't have anything to do with Seabiscuit, but they did end up using 11 horses for Seabiscuit. Really 10, but 11 if you count the foal when we see the baby Seabiscuit. They get rid of that one. Put him in the glue factory.
You're such a Monopoly guy.
But it's it's funny when you're making a horse film and you have a horse that has such personality. You need a variety of horses to play all the different versions of him. You've got the angry Seabiscuit that's kicking everything and trying to bite at people and everything. You've got the lazy one who lolls around in the fields eating apples. You've got a fast one. You've got a slow one. You've got one that works well when they're doing the photo shoots and all that sort of stuff. A whole variety of different horses for very specific reasons. And I think that's so interesting that they have to do that. Not to mention all the other horses. I mean, the variety of horses that they had to cast for this. I can only imagine the whole separate casting director. And maybe I wonder, how they do that. I mean, is it boiled down to race times or how well they listen? I'm curious about how that whole thing works.
Jeff Bridges plays Charles Howard.
Good old Jeff Bridges.
Jeff Bridges is great. Jeff Bridges is just great, right? When is he not? He's nuts and he's great. I really like Jeff Bridges in this movie. I think he plays he plays Jeff Bridges playing Charles Howard. I mean, I really find him really affable in this film. I don't think that the script does an apt job and gives Bridges enough to play with. In terms of how brilliant and crazy Charles Howard was as a person. He was a master at branding and marketing this horse, and to the point where they were naming fruit after Seabiscuit. Soldiers were drawing, instead of drawing ladies and on the nose cones of their bombers, they would draw Seabiscuit. They would paint Seabiscuit on their planes, leading them into battle. I mean, Seabiscuit was everywhere, and I think I think Jeff Bridges could have done more with the Howard Hughes-esque persona that was Charles Howard.
Yeah, he could have. I guess it just depends on how you're going to write it. And I think that there's so much. I mean, this is the sort of thing where, you could do the version of his story that fits this one. I mean, if you look at Howard Hughes, we've got The Aviator. We've got the new one coming out with... Warren
Beatty.
Yeah, Warren Beatty. And then there was that one that came out in the 80s, and there's so many different versions of a person that you can tell. And I think what they chose to really focus on was the broken side of Howard and how losing a son to an automobile really changed his view on his position in the world of automobiles. And just kind of left it at that. And so I thought that was fine, focusing on that. You're right. He certainly has other things in his life that are very crazy and definitely interesting notes.
Well, it's important, though, don't you think, that if you're going to tell the story of Howard as he lost his son and rebuilt, you also have to tell the story from a character's perspective of Howard and how he relates to this horse. Those are two very different parts of his life over the course of the years that were compressed here. And we sort of need both of them, is what I'm saying. Like, I think it's perfectly okay to talk about Howard and what he lost in order to be where he is today. That's great. But I think there's more mania that would have set a much better tone for who this character is.
Well, yeah, I guess. I just don't know if that was the story here. I mean, this one really focused on him and then really his relationship with not so much just the Seabiscuit side of it, but really the Red side of it, and how Red kind of became this surrogate son and how he kind of saw him as this son. And, for me, that was kind of the focus of it. But you're right. I mean, there's definitely sides to Charles Howard that are pretty interesting. And, it's interesting. The movie focuses so much on telling the story about Charles Howard's loss of his son and how Red becomes kind of the surrogate son for him. It doesn't even mention that he had other children. It's
right.
It's an interesting little kind of footnote. It's like, yeah, he actually has like 3 other kids. And it doesn't bring that up. And, it makes me wonder. It's like, well, how much was he really hurting for this loss of a child if he had these other children that were kind of there? Did he kind of not pay attention to them because Red was kind of his surrogate child? Because
in terms of this performance, right, they play this as if he is in mourning until the bitter end, right? He is not a well person. He's not completely put together emotionally until the bitter end of the film. And that's for dramatic purpose. I get that. But I do think we're missing a big part of it.
Some of that may boil down to the book. I haven't read the book, but the way that it sounds is that Laura really kind of focused on the relationship between these 3 people and the horse, and it's entirely possible that was just kind of a direction she took in the book, and that's just how Ross went with it because that's how it was presented there. I don't know. I haven't read the book.
All right. How about Elizabeth Banks?
I just love her. I think that she's fantastic. This is probably where I fell in love with her because she's just so awesome, despite the fact that she had bit parts in like Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2. But this was really just, where she kind of came into her own. And man, it's just easy to fall in love with her.
So I found myself really sort of torn on Elizabeth Banks because I felt like, this was still reasonably early in her career, although she had, some notable roles before that, Wet Hot American Summer and Spider-Man, obviously Betty Brant, and Catch Me If You Can she was in, and she was in a number of films leading up to Seabiscuit. Small roles, but this role, it was it was the partner role to the rich industrialist, and I felt like it was ultimately transplantable. I didn't see anything that I really adore about Elizabeth Banks and her work today in this, and I miss it.
I don't think she could have done more. The part wasn't written to be a big part. It was a tough woman who can handle the world of men in the 30s. And could hold her own with them. But she was a woman in the 30s, and it really is, to a large extent, the thankless wife role, right? That's, to a large extent, that's what the role is. I just think that at this point in her career, it was great to see her, there and in a role that actually I found memorable. Because a lot of times those thankless wife roles, you don't really, it's like, which woman was that thankless wife?
Oh, totally.
You end up forgetting who they are.
She nailed it. She really did nail it. I just think, and you're, the way you said it is much better than the way I did. She could have done more with a better written part, but it is what it is. And she obviously wasn't central to the story that they wanted to tell. And that's the thing that I'm.
Yeah, she was she had a catalyst role to kind of help Charles kind of through this issue that he had, loss of his son, and get through that. So she functions very well in context of the script to help move him through his story. But the really interesting thing about Marcella Zabala is that she actually. And it's so funny because I catch this every time I watch the movie, where when they first meet down at the track in Mexico, or actually outside of the bullfighting ring, she's like Marcella. I'm Marcella Zabala. I'm the older sister of. Oh yeah, right. And they kind of just have one of those acknowledgments, like, oh yeah, I know who you are.
Right.
And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder who she is. And so this time I was like, well, I got to figure this out because I feel like they're saying something there, but they're not really saying anything. I'm like, is she, the sister of somebody married to a movie star, or what is it? Well, it turns out she's actually the older sister to somebody who married Charles Howard's son.
She's the older sister to somebody who married Charles Howard's son. So his son Frank has a mother aunt?
Right. Yeah. It's either Frank or Robert. I don't know which son it was, but yeah, his son married Marcella's younger sister. And this is why that's how they address it in the film.
Because nobody talks about the mother aunt.
Because it's like,
Seabiscuit.
oh, right. So
I'm glad you looked that up. That's bananas.
the times.
Okay. All right. Well, speaking of great performances, Chris Cooper is Tom Smith. What a fantastic performance here.
Always.
I mean,
always out of the gate.
Yeah. Even if I don't know what he's doing, chasing horses and, sleeping on a train, don't know what he's doing. I don't care. It's Chris Cooper. I'll watch that all the damn day. I love Chris Cooper. He's fantastic. They call him the real horse whisperer, that he had this innate ability around horses that nobody could really duplicate. Even the best trainers found themselves in awe of his ability, but he had no social grace, and that ability led many people to put up with his crazy lack of social skill, but he found a real partner with Howard in Seabiscuit.
Yeah, and when you say that, you mean Tom Smith is the real horse whisperer. Chris Cooper
right.
is not the real horse whisperer.
I don't want to saddle Chris Cooper with that mantle, so to speak. Sorry, Chris. I meant Tom.
But he is right. But he is so good, and he's so subtle with everything that he's doing here, and it's great because he's. It's so interesting how little and subtle his movements and his gestures are.
Well, and his affectation of speech.
Well, and to the point where Gary Ross was, they would talk about it, and Gary Ross, even standing next to the camera watching him, he's like, well, I can't tell if he's doing anything, but I guarantee I'll be able to see it when I go watch the dailies. And that's, I think that's how you get one of those actors who just can do the real subtle stuff. And Chris Cooper he's always doing that great stuff. I mean, he's just really fantastic with all that. I love
great. Tobey Maguire, Red Pollard. How well do you think Tobey captured the dichotomy of Red Pollard? He is celebrated as this sort of intellectual, with this brutish intellectual, that he is constantly reading Shakespeare and quoting Shakespeare, and I think they brought that out a little bit in the script. But he was hot-tempered and easy to fight.
I thought Tobey Maguire was the perfect actor to play Red Pollard. I mean, Tobey was a guy who, I enjoyed him as Spider-Man, but I think, and I think Wonder Boys was, I think, probably the film that for me really kind of got me hooked on him. But Seabiscuit is where I really fell in love with him, and I just felt like he was just an actor who could really connect in ways that I found, for me, really powerful in films. And I think that Tobey Maguire has such his own kind of difficult life that he had when he grew up, that I felt like he was the perfect person to really kind of bring this this darkness out into this character and play this character really torn and angry about everything going on in his life. And it was really hard to kind of open up and kind of accept things. The way that Tobey grew up, he had a lot of darkness in his younger life. I feel like it must have helped him attach to this character.
I really enjoyed him in Pleasantville. I enjoyed him. Wonder Boys, you bring up Wonder Boys, is still the film that I find my very favorite of his work. But
absolutely,
this is. I think you're right, and I think that they got really lucky, frankly, with him, that they could find somebody who could both capture that darkness, capture the wonder and excitement of winning, and fit the physicality of the character, because this is a unique physical performance. He played the sort of giant of jockeys, but in general, he was able to truck with the jockey crew and the stunt jockeys and not look out of place. And so his mannerisms, his physique, I think that really lends it to the part. I think he was great. A couple of more people to talk about before we bust out of here. But for me, the real highlight is William H. Macy. I don't think we can ignore Macy as TikTok McLaughlin. He was the race caller on the radio.
He's great, man. Is he good? It's a bit part. It's probably I'm guessing completely fictionalized, but it feels so authentic for the time. I just absolutely love everything that he does here.
What's interesting though is if you watch the original races, I don't know if I never got a name for the person who was calling the race. You can find it on YouTube. The match race, and it's the same script. Like he's saying the same thing. How many horses ahead he is and all these things. So it is, maybe a fictionalized character, but my goodness, it's authentic language for sure, because we had it. He was great. Who else excites you on the cast before we move on?
Oh, just great. I mean, there's a lot of great actors. Michael Angarano, Michael O'Neill, Eddie Jones, even Gary Ross popping up as a track announcer. I mean, a lot of great people. I don't think we could continue, though, without at least acknowledging Gary Stevens coming in as George Wolfe. He is a jockey. He had no acting training, but he ends up delivering a really great performance here as George, Red's jockey buddy. And I think he just does a solid job here. I really enjoy seeing him in the film, and it's not like he's an actor, but boy, does he know how to pull off a performance. I thought he was great.
Oh, I thought he was wonderful, particularly the final race, their last moment together when he slows down.
Oh, jeez.
That's the waterworks sequence. Like, I don't even know. It is. I don't even know if I could talk about it. I don't even know if I could say the lines. It's that kind of a sequence when he backs up and he is helping, because he knows what Seabiscuit needs. He needs to be head to head with somebody, and he gives it to him. He lets his horse give Seabiscuit the look, and then it's off to the races, so to speak. You're crying right now, aren't you?
I am.
A little bit. Yeah, George Wolfe was fantastic. He did. He actually went on and did a series, I guess, Luck. He did the series Luck on HBO with Dustin Hoffman. This was Michael Mann.
Right.
And,
the horse show that
right.
Didn't it have a lot of drama because of was it ASPCA issues or something like that? It had some problems.
Serious, yeah.
So.
He played Ronnie Jenkins in all 9 episodes. He was also Augie French in the TV series Wildfire once. So everything else, all of his other credits, he doesn't have any other narrative stuff. All of his other credits are documentary. But he was great. He was really a singular performer in this thing.
Yeah.
John Schwartzman, I already mentioned John Schwartzman. I thought, apart from the film just has a wonderful look to it. It's quite lovely, but the treatment of the track is stunning. The races are stunning.
Oh, just absolutely beautiful work. I know it was really technical filmmaking. You get through like the really beautiful stuff where you're out in the trees and you're getting the horse, and Tobey kind of going through the trees or laying under the juniper tree or whatever. Just great stuff, or the foggy stuff. I mean, there's a lot of that beautiful stuff, but that track stuff is so technical, and trying to plan the races the right way, it can be so challenging. But the way they shot it is just, it's stunning to look at. Maybe that's why I find the racing just so awesome compared to going to a real racetrack or watching a real race.
Well, did you see Secretariat?
I did.
How does that stack up for you? For you at this one, particularly around specifically the cinematography?
I can't remember the cinematography of Secretariat that much, and I don't remember the film that well. I know I thought it was okay, but it didn't wow me or anything. I was like, okay, well, I saw it. So
to me, it is like the Poseidon Adventure of horse movies, right? The way they treat it's a giant cast. Everybody has a cut. Like everybody gets a reaction shot at every single moment of any emotional weight. But the cinematography of that, which generally I didn't like the film. I don't know. On IMDb, it stands up pretty closely. I mean, it's like 1/10 of a point off below Seabiscuit. It does not deserve to be there. But the one horse innovation that they brought to Secretariat that they don't have in Seabiscuit is the rear view between the legs of the horse shot. I kid you not. You are under the horse looking backwards through its crotch at the horses behind it. They cut to that angle a number of times, and it really makes you appreciate John Schwartzman's work on this film because, oh my God, really? Anyway, I bring up Schwartzman, and I'm such a fan. I mean, he obviously has some big movies under his belt since he did Amazing Spider-Man, Pearl Harbor, Jurassic World. So he's got some big things under his belt. But this film, I think the way he treated the racing and made it both an invigorating, exciting, event to watch as an emotional beat in the film, but also make it a work of art. I mean, it was just lovely to watch how the visual respect he treated the track.
What's funny is that, he had shot The Rookie the year before, and that is actually the film, of all the films that he has shot, that's the film that is the one that linked Gary Ross to hiring John Schwartzman for this, because his son The Rookie was his son's favorite movie, and he's like, Dad, you got to use that guy. And so that's how it came to pass.
That's awesome.
I love that.
That's actually great. That is great. So in spite of the cinematography being fantastic, they did have an opportunity to really screw it up with crazy fake horses.
Well, they don't bug me, but I know some people are bugged by the Equicizers, which are, jockey training devices. That's kind of like a horse that moves. It's almost like a bull riding sort of thing, except it's for horse riding. And yeah, you kind of sit on it and you ride, and you got to kind of do the whole thing. And they use those a number of times, and they're designed to look pretty realistic. But it has been pointed out by people that sometimes the movement of the Equicizer, when you cut from it to the movement of the actual horse, just in no way looks authentic.
It's similar to I don't know, what's a movie with some good rowing? Oxford Blues. You get some good crew action in there. It's like that. You'd have a wide shot of a whole crew team and they're rowing, and then you cut to a guy on a rowing machine in a gym close up. Like it's that kind of a jarring experience. Occasionally, it's not. It's lovely. The pacing is a little bit off on the horse's head, and you may note that. I'm just saying, if you've never seen the movie, get ready. And Equicizers are crazy expensive.
Yeah, if you're in the market, I guess. It doesn't bug me. I hardly ever notice it, only if I'm really looking. And generally, it's only Tobey who's ever on the Equicizer. I think when he's talking to him, I don't know if he's on the Equicizer or not, but he might be for some of his shots. But
just for stability, I would imagine, just to be able to put them together.
Especially the dialogue sort of stuff.
Right.
But I don't know. It doesn't bug me, though.
Yeah.
I'm okay with it.
Stunts by Dan Bradley. Stunt coordinators Dan Bradley and Sylvia Wolf-Bush. Just to acknowledge great work in making some crazy horse-on guy action. I mean, they throw guys around.
Not to mention the horrible accident scene, which is just pretty devastating. Getting dragged around by a horse and then smacked into a wall. It's pretty brutal.
It was brutal, and it looked brutal, and by that I mean it looked great. Yes. William Goldenberg did the editing.
Like I said, I already like it. All the transitions, the great little Capra-esque montage of all the news and all that. All that's great. I think they do a great job. And we didn't mention, but I think editing is as great a place as any to discuss it. The really fascinating and ingenious way that Gary Ross chose to have both of those big races start. It's completely antithetical to the way that Hollywood operates. You know, you build up to the start of a big race, and then you show the start of the big race, and then you show the big race, and then you show the winning of the big race. Here, you build up to the start of the big race, of the match race, and just as you hear the buzzer, it fades to white, and then you just hear the radio, and you see like images of people listening to the radio as you kind of are realizing this is how the vast majority of people in the United States at the time actually tuned into this. And I found it really fascinating.
I did too. And I made a comment to you that I thought it would be, how great would it be to have been able to listen to this on the radio? And you were like a big smart aleck, not. But when I stand by that. Like, there is an enormous amount of drama hearing the caller on the radio, having this collective experience around the horse. And I think that it's pretty magical. I think it was, to your point specifically, I love the way they did that. And I think it brings us right back into the time, a callback to the way they kick off the film. It is a beautiful transition. But I also think it kindles something very special. Of course, this is, we're two guys coming to you in your ears. So
That's right.
Anyhow, William Goldenberg, we've talked about him fairly recently. He's the cinematographer, or editor, I should say. He's the editor behind Heat, also Zero Dark 30 and Argo and Imitation Game. And oh my goodness, he's got some fantastic credits under his belt. Awesome editor. Music, Randy Newman.
This, maybe I'm torn between this and The Natural, but these are, I think, Randy Newman's two greatest scores. I just think this music, it fits the period, it fits the emotion. I think that he found a really strong way to score this film. It's really touching.
You know what's funny about it? You say it fits the period. I think this really is his period. His best works,
that's probably true.
They really hearken to this period, and even his pop music, right? His sort of it harkens back, and even A Bug's Life. Like, when you compare A Bug's Life to this film, you can feel like it fits the period there too. Like it's tough for him to break out of this sort of genre, but it works really well here. It's beautiful. That's all I got. How did it do at award season?
Well, this was, it was nominated for 7 Academy Awards. It didn't win anything. It was kind of a big year for some Hobbits, but it was nominated for Best Picture, and that lost to Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. This was kind of that year where it's like, it's the last year, let's give them everything because they're so great, and which they are. I mean, I really do enjoy that film. I'm just being smarmy. But yes, so Lord of the Rings took Best Picture. It was nominated for Best Writing Adapted Screenplay, lost to Lord of the Rings. It was nominated for Best Cinematography, lost to Master and Commander, The Far Side of the World. Kind of can't argue that. That's a pretty strong pairing, those two. Yeah. I'm kind of, they're both pretty beautiful looking. And City of God actually was nominated that year as well. Also lost. Best Art Direction Set Decoration, lost to Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. It was nominated for Best Costume Design, also Lord of the Rings. Best Sound Mixing, also Lord of the Rings. Andy Nelson was nominated for Best Sound Mixing, but he lost. Oh, what a shame.
What a shame.
Best Editing, we just talked about William Goldenberg, but that also lost to Lord of the Rings. So all in all, it was a great year for the Hobbits, but not so good a year for Little Seabiscuit.
But how did it do in the box office?
Well, Seabiscuit was my birthday movie back in 2003. Maybe that's another reason I'm so connected to it.
Do you think that propelled it to its ultimate success in the box office?
I think that was it. I think people knew just intrinsically.
Right.
That, I should go see this because there's some reason I just can't pin. But yeah, it opened July 25th, 2003. This movie cost $87 million to make. I couldn't find the Princeton advertising budget. So that leaves it at an adjusted budget of just under $114 million in today's dollars. Just like The Horse, the movie did capture the nation, raking in a little over $120 million and about $28.5 million internationally, giving it an adjusted total gross just under $195 million. That leaves our horse hero coming in with an adjusted profit per finished minute of about 577,000. All in all, I think it's safe to say we can chalk up another success for the little horse that could.
Aw, choo-choo. Choo-choo. I think we can, Andy. And with that, we should probably go ahead and rank it, don't you think?
I think it's time. Let's do it.
Head over to flickchart.com/thenextreel, and you'll see it right there in our recently added films list there. And click on it and go ahead and add it to your list, and let's see how it does. I'm a little concerned.
I'm concerned about you. I'm concerned about you.
No.
And that this is going to be another Black Hawk Down battle.
Let's see. Let's see what happens.
Seabiscuit or Hot Fuzz? Seabiscuit.
Yeah, I would say Seabiscuit.
Seabiscuit or Out of the Past? Seabiscuit for me.
Okay.
Oh, sure. Oh, Seabiscuit or Aliens?
Aliens.
I'm going to say Aliens. Seabiscuit or The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly?
I'm going to say The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
I am too, surprisingly. Seabiscuit or Zero Dark 30? Seabiscuit for me.
Oh, Zero Dark 30 for me.
All right.
Here we go.
Are you locked in on that one?
Oh, yeah. Let the games begin.
No. Okay. All right. Here we go.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. Rock. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Scissors.
Mm-hmm.
Seabiscuit or Seven Samurai? I am going Seabiscuit.
I will give you Seabiscuit.
All right. Seabiscuit or The Social Network? Seabiscuit for me.
You know, in terms of true stories, I am absolutely going to give you Seabiscuit. I think I would probably put Social Network on first, but when I think about it in terms of sort of adaptations of real life, I get really mad. So I'll give you Seabiscuit.
You mean Mark Zuckerberg still isn't brooding?
There may be brooding, but there's other stuff that makes me want to punch myself in the neck.
Oh, it's
terrible.
Seabiscuit or Zodiac? A lot of David Fincher. I'm going with Seabiscuit, though.
I'll give you Seabiscuit, too. I can't believe this.
It's not the sequel, Pete. It's not the sequel. It's Seabiscuit.
That's the one where he goes to Somalia.
Oh, right. All right, that lands our horse at number 59. Seabiscuit is number 29 on my personal flick chart, so I would have ranked this much higher. Yet I have not been doing well on my rock, paper, scissors these last few weeks. So there it is, number 59.
I actually need to Seabiscuit. Can I just tell you, one of the things I learned about this whole experience is, you know, there are certain words that I can't spell and can't seem to learn to spell. And apparently biscuit is one of those words.
Apparently it is. Yes, I noticed.
God. I don't even have Seabiscuit on my flick chart right now, so I that tells you where it is for me.
Sad.
Yeah.
Sad state of affairs.
Yeah. So, what does this do for your? I assume it's a 5-star for you.
This is absolutely 5-star film for me.
Over on letterboxd.com/thenextreel.
Absolutely.
It's a 4-star film for me.
So it's a 6-star film for me.
I can nickel and dime you to 4.5 any way you want to cut it.
Oh, so funny.
Sorry, Seabiscuit.
So funny.
Where do we go from here, Andy?
Well, yes, we, as we mentioned, we have a listener's choice episode coming up, and it is going to be Matt Medrano, and we are going to be talking about David Cronenberg's fantastic remake of The Fly.
Yummy.
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeedy.
I've been throwing up on my food ever since. I'm very excited to talk about this. Before we do, though, we do have a film board coming up just this very weekend. If you want to join us, head out to the theatras and catch up with Jack Reacher, Never Look Back. I'll bet it features Tom Cruise running.
I bet he will.
We shall see.
I bet he will.
We shall see. So there you have it. That's where we go. And until then, I got to go to bed.
All right, well, I'm going to go lolling for a few hours under the limbs of the juniper trees.
Amazon giveth, Andy.
As Amazon always doeth.
Now, for those keeping up, we just talked about Seabiscuit, the story of Tobey Maguire on a horse. A straight-up family film. Would you agree?
For the most part, yes.
Okay. My story, Nancy writes with a 1-star review, and her review is titled, "The Storyline Was a Winner." Great story. But I hated the language and nudity in it. They turned what could have been a great family movie into something that I barely wanted to continue watching. Very sorry about that.
Wow.
So, apparently, naked horses are offensive to some, because as far as I remember, there was no nudity in this film.
Well, that ties into mine, because Athena also gave it a 1-star and said, "I love the story of Seabiscuit, but it is so disappointing that they put the scenes in the brothel in this movie.
What?
It is very distasteful, and I hope that my children never watch this and are tainted by it."
What?
And I will say, my wife and I, knowing the brothel scenes were coming, we actually shooed our kids out for about 10 minutes while we waited to get past that scene.
Well, I feel like based on these reviews, I need to go watch it again or see if I can find some sort of a director's cut, because I think maybe adding a little nudity or a brothel might help.
Well, I think it was in the beginning when you weren't paying attention.
In the first 40 minutes, that's where it was cut. Slipshod cutting, that's what it was. They cut the brothel.
Oh, dear.
Thanks, Amazon.
It is hard to believe that we have been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
Oh, I know. You're telling me. Producing this show week after week requires a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Just visit thenextreel.com/originals. Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you, and allow us to keep having these great conversations.
In Season 6, our Disease Films series had adaptations like The Omega Man, based on I Am Legend, The Andromeda Strain, Children of Men, and Blindness.
I Am Legend is so much better than The Omega Man.
What about the Will Smith version?
Don't get me started.
For our This Is Real Life Jack series, we talked Black Hawk Down and Seabiscuit, some great true stories based on fantastic books.
And we had more listeners' choices like The Fly, The Emigrants, and Scott Pilgrim vs. the World.
You just did a series on The Fly on the Sitting in the Dark podcast. Did you read the original material?
Wasn't watching every Fly movie enough?
Our Big Betty Davis series featured adaptations like The Little Foxes, Now Voyager, All About Eve, and Whatever Happened to Baby Jane.
Are you calling Betty Davis big?
Only in personality and force.
She is a force to be reckoned with.
We talked about the entire The Godfather trilogy, of course. Iconic page to screen, even if it is just the one Mario Puzo book. I wonder if Coppola will ever make The Sicilian.
We also had some Zhang Yimou adaptations with Judo and Raise the Red Lantern. Absolutely gorgeous movies.
And don't forget the Hughes Brothers series with From Hell, based on the graphic novel. Brilliant material.
Kelly Reichardt gave us Wendy and Lucy and Certain Women, adapted from short stories.
Plus more Hayao Miyazaki as we tackled Howl's Moving Castle.
Find all these books and more at thenextreel.com/originals. Every purchase supports the show.
Get the full list of adapted films that we've covered at thenextreel.com/originals and start your next read today.